Hello friendos, this is just me doing a bit of a breakdown on Oasis for Canada vs USA. I think this game and this series in particular was just a cut above everything else that I've seen probably in the World Cup so far. So I thought I'd break it down for everyone. Alrighty, so the first thing I'll probably look at is obviously just composition wise. They're both kind of running a form of goats. Canada more of a traditional goats just without the brig and with the sombra. USA, this is a bit different. They removed the Zaya and put a monkey in, or Winston. Um, Pretty much the difference is these two are kind of doing the same role in terms of Muma's going to be trying to flank them the entire time, getting behind them. Shawfall's doing sort of the same thing, making sure he's hacking the right person. XQC should have a bit more presence with agilities on the Zaya compared to what USA does. Um, but I think cooldown management from XQC this map. I have seen this map before, just to be clear. So I think cooldown management from XQC does hurt him a little bit. But basically, what's going to happen is USA is going to want to get Mimu behind them or on the flank, cause some havoc in their backline while Moth and Sinatra are sort of speeding on forward to put as much pressure on XQC in the front line as possible. Canada kind of want to do the same thing, but they need to get rid of Raucous, or if they have their ults available, they need to get rid of sort of the shields available to give a free shatter, and then kind of snowball a fight from there. So there's a couple different win conditions involved, but generally speaking, Mima flanking, Shawfall flanking, getting the hack on, first pick on one of the supports. Sustain is probably one of the big things here because DPS on either team is pretty low, just in general, if we're just talking about like mouse one. So that's probably the big. There's not a lot of difference compositionally in what they're trying to do, but ability wise and how they're doing it, that's where the differences come across.
Something that I kind of expected coming into the weekend, which is going to sound random, but Sinatra...
And you can see you can see it already. Mim's immediately splitting off from his team, taking the high ground up there. He's going to go for a scout.
Reinhardt. So
up there, you kind of have control of the map because Mima can pretty much jump almost wherever he wants in sort of this mid section, as long as he controls that high ground up there.
I've been watching his stream a lot lately, playing some with Space, and he always was like, every time I seem to tune in, he's always playing Reinhardt. Like, it's just kind of...
That's so unfortunate. Mima doesn't see Shawfall there.
Weird, no. Seeing him a little bit early.
And you can kind of see, so in the background, USA, they took a lot of space very quickly. And they tend to do that. The one thing I noticed when I watched this series is they tend to do that a lot. They're much quicker at setting up and setting up aggressively. Whereas Canada are a little bit more traditional and not passive, but they're not willing to take that risk of that extra little step that USA was taking. So Canada was kind of sitting there waiting for the point to unlock as to avoid necessary spam, just in case they had a Pharah, or which is pretty common, Pharah Hanzos on this map, especially of late. So they're kind of just hiding, waiting for the point to unlock so that they can avoid that. But Sinatra and USA literally push up so far that they see them kind of doing that, and XQC goes to react. I did see him use his charge, so they no longer have that charge cooldown.
Earlier in the weekend,
so we keep that in mind. They've also just used friendly bubble on XQC. So what we're going to see, what's probably going to happen now is Sinatra will charge forward.
Need to be on Reinhardt at moment.
And he's able to do that because he knows nothing can stop them. Nothing can stop him from getting this charge off. There's no Shawfall there that he can see. XQC has no counter charge. Agilities has no friendly bubble. So even though they had a bit more aggression and presence in agilities in XQC compared to USA, they kind of didn't use the bubble appropriately on XQC, knowing that he no longer had the charge up for the counter. One thing as well I'd just like to point out is Sinatra went all the way through the team. He didn't stop at one of these doors here. He went past it through them. he knocked everyone kind of away a little bit, and he took 2 people with him. So I know poor Barney's dead, and I'm pretty sure Crimzo got knocked out of that room with them. And what happens is Note immediately turns around to try and almost peel.
Right, so it's going to be
the other thing that's happening here that I really didn't like was XQC turned around and started swinging with Still, Space, Hydration, Raucous, and Moth behind him, just shooting to his back. That's why he's so low right now. That's, in my opinion, that's a big mistake. You need to immediately realize that your team will handle Sinatra in the back line. He's got no more cooldowns. Your better option is to put your shield up. Maybe you'll probably get stunned, to be fair, but at least you're avoiding any kind of assistance to him for as long as possible. And to just turn around and swing him, and you're always going to get slammed in the back by that. The other thing that it did from Sinatra's side of things is he's now surrounding Canada. Like they basically got USA got all around them. Muma is still on the point on main, ready to come in from one angle. Sinatra is behind them. So, for example, let's just say this is Team Canada. I mean, yeah, that's Team Canada. So USA is here, here, and now they're here. So you got like 3 angles on poor Canada. That's going to do it. This is very difficult to defend. Very difficult to defend. And so you notice they're all being corralled back into their only option, which is back through there.
essentially double main takes here to start things off, but Sinatra lands an early charge, and it's all looking pretty good for the United States. XQC.
This is another. So this is. I'm a huge fan. Like, agilities are like I probably. It's not that I didn't rate him, but probably this is the first time I've noticed it this obviously of him doing something like this. Agilities takes on the role of like main tank right here, and I say the role, right? He's not a main tank, obviously. Well, tanks are kind of just general, but the point is, he steps forward and doesn't continue to just run away. He purposefully bubbles Note to make sure Hydration can't stun him. He lets Note get behind him, and then he starts kiting back, making sure Note is always closer to his spawn than he is.
He cut down already.
He's basically forcing himself to be the target to save Note's life. And this is just simply so that, because if they stagger Note, it's a lot worse than if they just kill agilities.
Right, because this fight.
So that way you obviously don't have Baby Diva. He gets into Baby Diva form and they just leave him. And then he's either got to run all the way over here and kill himself, and there's another 10 seconds, or he goes back to spawn, changes, and loses his like 60% to ult charge.
It's all but done.
It's interesting, they sub out what would be like, you'd play like a Reinhardt Devo with like a Zarya in a certain
So that was,
cases,
I mean, you'll see what I mean here.
they decided to go with the Reinhardt with
So there's the bubble and the Reinhardt charge gone at the same time.
the Winston and the Diva.
Sinatra had the choice to pick that wall, or straight up the middle. And he chose straight up the middle.
You could say that's to go against some,
Took the other support with him.
right? A really easy spot checking with the Winston and the
And so yeah, that's kind of how that one went down. Now this one, I'm not 100% sure what the trigger was here. Must have just because of that live replay box that was kind of in the corner. Everything went a little bit fast with the cameraman. And I couldn't quite see. I've only got a small screen. But basically, I'm assuming either Crimzo used his shift and faded away, and so Muma jumped in for him. Alternatively, they just chose to engage through the rotation because Canada right now is trying to push through space on their back. So whenever you see a team, or particularly an enemy team if you're playing, walking through space and they have space on their back, not the player, as in actual physical space behind them where they can't run and hide behind anything immediately, and you dive on them during that time, you're catching them in a good rotation for yourself. Because the issue is that if they want to fall back, they're falling back into space, so they have to take more damage to get out than if they had a choke on their back and they can just quickly walk behind edges. So that's potentially was just another option of them just being proactive in their engagement. Popping the nano boost onto Mima because that's a lot of damage coming out. Plus, Sinatra's already got ult. Space is already 72% ult, which is pretty close. And Mima will get a lot of ult charge off this damage.
Diva. Yeah, I mean, if you can force a fade and then jump on the enemy Moira.
Another thing I'll just point out, I'll just go back. I just want to point this out with
He's spot checking with the Winston and the Diva.
So the first thing that happens here is XQC is walking on. There are tables here. He's walking, and I think he's actually jumping.
Yeah, I mean, if you
and it's a little bit hectic, but in the jump, he either gets booped by Moth, he gets whiplashed by Hydration, or Sinatra swings or Space boops him. One of those three. Something, I'm not sure what it is, but gets him to move and sort of fly in the air. Sinatra realizes this and immediately shatters down. So at the moment, there's on this patch, on this tournament patch, there is still that lingering hitbox. So underneath here, if he once he's slammed, he will still get hit by that. So he's still going to go down, as you can see. In the new patch that's coming out on the PTR, this won't happen with the Busan map. Once Busan map is out, you won't be able to do this anymore. They've kind of fixed that up. So XQC gets hit by that.
force a fade
And then Sinatra makes a critical mistake, and I think this is just probably an experience thing, being that he obviously plays Tracer most of the time, or DPS anyway.
jump on the
But when you're playing Reinhardt, if you hold down M1, your swings will go from right to left, and then from left to right. And every time you do that, you boop your enemy just a little bit. Or if you've got a really experienced Reinhardt on the other team, sometimes you can do that, and they'll jump and they'll go with it, and so you boop them even further. Sinatra needed to let go of his M1 so that it was a swing like this, and then you let go, and then you swing again. So if every time you press M1, let go, swing again, it'll always start right to left, always right to left. Because he held it down,
the enemy Moira.
he moved XQC very slightly and then pressed shift,
She's going to be in.
which causes him to miss the charge on XQC, plus the fact that he's now standing up, so that probably didn't help his case either with Sinatra. Because of this miss, Muma, I think this is probably miscommunication, but Muma's going to dive in and overcommit here.
Big trouble as well. Again, aggression for the.
So he's now officially overcommitted. XQC is super low, and that's probably why. But no one else went in with him. This potentially could have been a bit of communication issue, because they could have turned around and just gone for Note immediately, who was kind of right next to them. Probably he just would have run away as well. Secondly, it would have been better. You've pushed them back far enough. You may as well go back, reset, take a second fight. You've already got coalescence out of them. You don't need to keep going. But I understand the thought process of trying to finish him off and then getting out. Because he's overcommitted, though, Mumba's immediately in a lot of trouble, and no one's going to be able to help him from here.
USA, they all want.
The other thing they do is USA has to turn around and help Space. Surefour and Note are still back there, and my assumption is he's been hacked, and they don't want to get him. The last thing you want is a diva out of mech before a team fight starts, because you're basically useless.
Pushing back though, as Canada have found a coalescence to at least propel.
What I do really like about this, though, and this is why you play Overwatch with sound on. This is one of the most important reasons. Mumo is the only target that can be hurt right now from any of these people behind this wall, because none of his team is back there. He heard XQC's charge, and as soon as he heard it, he popped Primal, because he's just assuming he's going to be hit by it.
XQC forward to a degree.
Which is fair enough.
That was brilliant. Go.
You just assume. He then does something else, which I also really enjoy. I think I probably would have preferred him to try and get out. However, I don't know how likely that would have been, considering everyone here is obviously aiming straight at him. Hence why he goes from here. The moment he's tagged, he's dropped to 50%. the moment he's charged. He's dropped to 50. He immediately jumps up. He's going to land first to boof agilities a little bit, and then with his primal rage, he's going to knock him away, and that's how you get someone to be knocked away the furthest. This little combination or this little mechanic.
It's for the primal rage just before he got charged to keep.
There it is. Look how far, like, agilities literally goes flying. And the idea here is Team USA probably knows that they have Grav. Muma has accepted the fact that he's probably not going to get out of this situation that he's got himself into. So instead of just going down or mindlessly swinging away and feeding ult charge to Barney or Crimzo again, now that he's used his ult, he instead tries to remove agilities from this fight completely, so that they cannot use Graviton Surge, which would be, if it lands, their win condition. The big thing about Graviton Surge is that pretty much any time you have it, it's almost a guaranteed victory condition. Assuming you can put, a Diva Bomb next to it, or you have everyone pretty much right on top of it. Even if you only get 1 or 2 people, that's enough to snowball the rest of a team fight. Remember, your ults aren't designed to kill all 6 people. You're meant to use it to give yourself a winning edge. It's not designed to completely finish a fight. However, with Graviton Surge, that's why it can be, even if you get 1 or 2, they're pretty much dead regardless of what happens. And that's why it can be like a very important victory condition for them. So Mima's just trying to move that off the table completely, which I think in his dying breaths is a very smart plan.
Himself alive, that would have been him dead if he hadn't done so. However, Canada still able to break back in, and there's an EMP available.
I mean, I don't actually know where Sinatra came from just then.
Oh, Muma, that was brilliant. Goes for the primal rage just before he got charged to keep himself alive. That would have been him.
Camera comes
dead
off him.
If he hadn't done so. However, Canada
he does get note
in,
though.
there's an EMP
The one thing, I don't know whether he thought maybe he'd get XQC, or I'm assuming that was probably the plan to try and get XQC in that charge. One thing I will say is they threw all 3 tank ults out. In my opinion, this is just overkill. Note was always going to use that self-destruct to get his bomb back. XQC has already used his shatter because Sinatra is not looking at him. I think you pulled Moth into this Graviton Surge, but you don't need it. Muma's already down. You've already knocked down Sinatra and Hydration. You may as well just let the bomb finish them off. Hold that ult for the next fight, and just go from there.
On and charge 3 for Notes, and Canada looking to get back in control.
Another good self-destruct from Note. That time.
And this is just agilities trying to stagger Raucous. Very, very quick thinking just to grab that and keep running again.
It's actually Sinatra who charges Note into the corner, and he ends up putting him in a great position. He uses the self-destruct, the Graviton Surge from agility.
The other reason as well, just going back to that previous fight before Muma died.
Oh, Muma, that was brilliant.
If Muma did try and let's just say hypothetically Muma gets out and they get to reset for another fight, what USA can now do, considering they know Agilities has this ult most likely, and they've used 1, 2, 3, 4 ults it looks like to try and win that fight, and they've lost them all, is go into it trying. I mean, they were very lucky that Canada pulled all 3 ults out. That shouldn't have happened. That was a big mistake from Canada, because now they're going to find that they will struggle to maintain ult advantage going into the next fights. Even if USA used 4, they will still struggle. Because, well, actually Canada used 4 as well, because Crimzo just used 1. So what you could do is, if you're not obviously you don't expect a team to do that. So instead, what you could do is, if Mima comes out, you have the team reset around here, for example. and you push back out and you pressure agilities. And the reason you pressure agilities is to try and force his ult out. And potentially what you can do is you can get him to waste it if space gets back into mech. You can, maybe he doesn't use it and he dies, and then you snowball this fight. Potentially he uses it and he gets everyone, you will die. But the issue is, then the thing is you no longer have to worry about it. So that's kind of that's called sort of controlling the enemy ults. In a way, you do have influence over what ults they use, depending on who you pressure. So if you pressure agilities, he's more likely to use that ult. You then don't have to worry about it the next time you come in. And you know, especially if you're not 100% sure if they have those ults and you want to test it, you know you're probably going to lose anyway. You can try and pressure them out. I don't recommend it because you're not sure. You're much better off just trying to pressure out an ultimate where you know they have it, you know it's going to be a win condition, you don't want them to have it for the next fight. You might lose this fight, and you've got plenty of time. Like, it's still the start of the round, so.
For the primal rage just before he got charged to keep himself alive. That would have been him dead if he hadn't
definitely
done so.
try and go
However,
out of your way
Canada's still able to break back
pressure
in. There's
people's
an
ults
EMP
out
available for
if you're
sure
not
for
going to win this fight.
now. This is about to get messy. Graviton and charge 3 for Notes. And Canada looking to get back in control.
Another good self-destruct from Note. That time, it's actually Sinatra who charges Note into the corner, and he ends up putting him in a great position. He uses the self-destruct. The Graviton surge from Agilities comes down right on top of it. They're able to get that big combo.
38% to 10 now. Canada starting to make up some of that deficit, and they still have that EMP for sure for available.
So this is one thing
Now,
as
Canada
well.
starting
I think
to make up some of that.
I think Moom is already going
deficit
around the back to flank, because I can see Barney shooting up there. So I think Moom is already taking this high ground, which is really good. Now I just want to watch Shawfall. So there's something that I've been thinking about, and I've been trying to drill it into everyone that I coach who's sort of a diva main, especially in this kind of meta where you're pretty much always going to be versing a Sombra or there's a Sombra somewhere. So right here, Space is sort of coming towards the fight. He's not really doing anything. He's not scouting. He's just trying to move to get to his team. What I would recommend is for him to do what's called basically jump shotting, or you know, shot tapping. Sorry. And what that is if you walk normally for diva. Shot tapping. What that is you're basically walking, and as you're walking, you're just tapping your shot button. You're tapping M1. You know what I mean? You're not doing it so that you're auto shooting. You're not doing it really fast. You're just same as if you were controlling Farah's jet fuel. It's just sort of on a timer. Tick, tick, tick. It's nothing to do damage. It's not what you're trying to do. So the reason you do that is to try and catch Sombras in situations like this, where you're just walking back to your point. A Sombra's trying to be a little bit risky, come past you, go into your line of sight, and you're just shot tapping her, and you tap her out of her invis, make her relocate, and now all of a sudden your supports are safe for another 4 or 5 seconds at minimum. And the trade-off for this is that you do move a little bit slower. Now I worked this out. You're slower by about 0.5 seconds, about half a second for every 40 meters. So I just literally went into the training range. I walked 40 meters with Diva down the line. I timed it. It's about 7 seconds per 40. And then shot tapping was about 7.4, 7.5. So it really doesn't slow you down that much. I'm not saying do it in spawn. I am saying doing it sort of mid to close range before fights is when you want to be doing it. And that's when you want to be catching out these Sombras, sorry.
Or available. Sneaking on through. We'll spot it for a brief moment there, but he's looking to make life a little bit harder.
That's a good reaction to the boop.
Oh, no,
in fact, it actually... Come on now. There we go. It actually, if I go back...
We'll spot it for a brief moment.
Shawfall is going for Moss.
He's looking to make life a little...
But because of the boop, he hits Raucus, and Raucus has already thrown out this the bio grenade, as you can see with that little arrow there. So that's a really good bip and a good reaction time to the bip.
Bit harder for Mother.
The other thing I want to point out here
Sneaking on through.
is XQC
For a brief moment.
is doing what I talked about, where he's holding a choke when he has space on his back. So, for example, if this is, I'll use this wall as like my little square, right? If this is your choke and you hold here and the enemy team is pushing through here, you have to back into space to get out. Whereas if you push through it, and I'll redraw it pink. Whereas if you do this, and this is you, and you're trying to push through, realistically there's all these little choke points that they can then hide behind, that you have to try and get to them. You know what I mean? Like XQC is never going to get to Lucio. He's never going to get to Raucus, and that's not the point of what he's doing. He's just trying to hold the choke. But there is all this space behind him where if they push in like this, the way that they're doing, he's never going to be able to get out of this situation without taking a lot of damage and giving up a lot of ult charge. He might get some ult charge to his supports and some ult charge for himself back, but never as much as that's going to make it worth it for him to be standing here.
He's looking to make life a little bit harder for Mother. Oh no, he's pooped away, forced to translocate.
And then I also want to point out the way they file in here. So this is what Team USA do. They create a path right down the center of Team Canada. So I've got two people here, I've got agilities here, and I've got Note here. There is no way, let's go back to my blue. There is no way that those two supports want to cross this road. There is now a bubble in the road as well. These two can't do anything. They can help each other, and that's about it. No one can help agilities. Note's too far away to do anything. And this Mima leap is a great space taker. This leap is a great space taker. Because it paves the way for his team, and these two they can do nothing.
And return to the point.
And this is just should just be a cleanup.
And that EMP is definitely going to need to be used in a moment. Sinatra pushing it.
I do want to note, so I just saw this little nano. Raucus didn't really need to use that on Muma. He was probably like quarter health, to be fair, but the one thing that happens is, so it didn't really need to be, the fight was done, they'd won it, they were just going to take the point. He could have just healed him. But what Muma does is even better next, so he's at take note, he's at 48% ult charge now.
Shadow available. Can they actually give up the point here? They vacate. They lost Note, and that seems to be enough for them.
Goes to 80. Gets 30 free ult charge off a nano boost. Puts them all back. He doesn't get a kill. He does trade some ult charge to their enemy supports. In my opinion, even though it wasn't needed, could have saved it for the next fight. He's still got good value out of it. And that's kind of the name of the game. Like, regardless of what happens, whether it's a mistake or it was supposed to happen that way, as long as you're getting a good chunk of value all the time,
on Reinhardt, but
you're
really
doing the
Muma's
right
setting
thing.
up a lot of this. When you have the Winston
and now they're going to have 3 tank ults coming into this next fight.
The Winston able to get in the back line, it makes sure for his life.
Also, this USA positioning
Aggressive on
kind of proves
Reinhardt, Muma's
not proves my point, but radiates kind of what I was saying about it. So they're setting up, not at this choke point, they're keeping that towards their back. They're setting up at this one, and I suppose this one as well. And then if Team Canada are trying to push through, and they want to back out, so let's say they try and go through, and then they say, oh no, I don't want to do this, there's everyone right there. They back out, and they try and get out. They now have space behind their back. They've got for example, they'd have all this space. And they've got to push through, they've got to retreat through that before they can actually get to somewhere where they're safe. So this positioning kind of shows what I was trying to say about that.
Setting up a lot
It's
of
also
it.
very aggressive. He's trying to kind of hide with his Rhine ult, so that if XQC tries to rush through either that way or that way, he can shatter the back line and just kind of win a free fight with one ult.
When you have the Winston in play, the Winston able to get in the back line, it makes Surfboard's life really tough on Sombra. What do? Do you go try and hack the...
Again, this is Muma doing sort of, I'm guessing, the more structured plan, coming around the back, causing trouble in their back line. This should allow for Moth to put on the speed and have Sinatra go forward, especially considering Sinatra's now used the ult about the same time that Muma landed.
Winston, do you try and hack some of the front line?
I think he's hit some of them.
Makes it
Possibly not.
on Sombra. What do? You go try and hack the Winston? Do you try and hack some of the front line?
I think you hit with like one person.
Makes it
Which is fine. That's fine. That's a decent ult. The one thing I'm assuming Aero, the USA coach, probably knew would happen with this comp is that if Muma jumps into the backline, he's very likely going to be hacked by Shore4 unless he's already trying to get into their backline or trying to trade places with Muma kind of thing. So I think this was always going to be a risk that they were happy to take with Muma, as long as the rest of their team push forward and put the proper pressure on the front line.
decision making much tougher.
That's the EMP coming out there. Moth in space.
So for example, is they traded 2 for 1 right now, and they've used 2 ults. To be fair, one of them's a defensive ult, so that's not really wasn't used beforehand. It's used just for a bit of extra healing, keep the armor on for the next fight. But this is a good trade. So a 2 for 1 trade, that's fine, especially on maps where the point is smack bang in the middle.
Both effective,
It's
but
not like either
Sinatra
one's spawning
still
close
able to
up.
stand tall. Dashing back to his team, hoping to make...
Again, XQC kind of did it again.
On the front line.
He uses...
Makes it
I mean,
decision.
you only just see it. But he's used his Reinhardt charge and didn't get any value out of it. He doesn't have a bubble to save him. And this leaves pretty much the same scenario as last time, and Sinatra gets a free charge if he hits this.
Out there, Moth in space, both effective, but Sinatra still able
Notices his team had fallen back as well. Would have been nice for him to get XQC here if it was a little bit earlier, but XQC put himself in such a dangerous position there. He's lucky that Sinatra chose to be safer rather than aggressive.
back to his team, hoping to maybe catch XQC on the way through, but he's happy.
But that was a good charge. So a lot of Reinhardts I know don't use charge to get back to their team. They often use charge to go down like long hallways where their team can't back them up just to get rid of Reinhardts. You want to be charging Reinhardts into a wall that is nearby them, so that even if you miss, you land up here and your team's not that far away. For example, like a good example, if Sinatra tried to charge XQC here and hit him into this wall, this is a bad charge. Sinatra is now too far away from his team to do anything about that. You just have to hope Moth can speed everyone forward in time before Canada react to the fact that XQC gets charged. And that's not a situation you really want to put yourself in. You'd rather charge, for example, you could charge him into this wall, and that would be much better. Because there's a little bit less distance there.
Enough just being with his teammates for the time being. That's a wrap.
This bomb is a little bit too early. It's also probably going too far. You need to wait for XQC to commit a little. Like XQC committed there, which is fine. Probably needed to wait for him to commit around there. Wait for him to start stepping in the middle of these pedals, and then throw that bomb. And you'd try and land it probably just in the middle of those stairs. Even there, and that way you can kind of get that blast radius going on, which will make it very, very difficult for people behind the wall to sit. It'll also force XQC, if he's standing here, for example, not that that's a good position, but hypothetically, he is then going to turn around, and that's an easy sleep dart. Or he's going to try and speed back, and it's a longer drive for him to get back, which means Sinatraa probably has more time to speed onto him. Muma's coming back as well. I understand the bomb. He's trying to force the fight, trying to get it behind them to cause trouble and take space. That's kind of what this ult does. When you're throwing it, that's a good point. When you're throwing a Diva bomb behind Team Canada there, you're telling them that you want to fight them. Basically, you want them to move forward. If you throw the bomb in front of Team Canada, you're saying you're trying to hold the space for a little bit longer, and you kind of letting them know you're not ready to fight, and you're forcing them to respect that. Because if they don't, well, then they all die. So when you're throwing Diva bombs, think about that in your placement. That's kind of why Poco's so good at it. Even though he's throwing them into gravitons a lot of the time, even when he doesn't, his placement is always kind of picture perfect, because he puts it in a place where he's saying either you're coming to fight us in a very dangerous place, or you're all going to die anyway.
Rally, self-destruct thrown in. XQC wasn't born yesterday. Shield is up. He'll push forward a little bit now. Canada just need to regroup.
Now this is probably a mistake from USA, in my opinion. They're being super aggressive just because of that bomb that went off, and they're trying to grab something small from it, but they're never going to get anything. They're also probably trying to buy some more time for Mima to get back. But this is what XQC's mistake was. XQC didn't have hydration to back him up. But this is what their mistake was. So by USA doing the same thing, they are risking a little bit.
Surefire had his translocator forced. He was low, and now he's ready to return.
This is where XQC can take advantage of Sinatraa, though, with a big earth-shattering.
And that's kind of what, again, this is like they're about to get. They just got punished for doing it. It allowed for Surefire to go behind them, get a hack off onto Sinatraa, and a nice shatter came out. Moth is already about to drop the beat, which was very quick reaction times.
He knocks down Sinatraa. He forces him into the.
And it's actually saved them. I would have liked to see, considering it's probably last fight, if they lose it, to see Note throw that bomb in nice and early, rather than trying to hold on to it.
Corner, the Sinatraa, though, with
this is normally I would say it's overkill.
bigger.
So right now I'd say don't use it. Don't use it. The moment that drop beat comes out, Note needs to use this. This is one of those cases of it's better safe than sorry, because they've used a defensive ult of Lucio beat after waiting for a quick second. They've now immediately retaken this advantage, because with your damage on Canada, you can't kill these people with the beat drop. It's just not going to happen.
Sinatraa, he forces him into the corner. You know, the more experience of the Reinhardt players, but they don't get any kills off of it.
It's unfortunate that he waits for so long to do it.
Down barrier was well timed. Matt and the USA able just to weather the storm. Self-destruct thrown into the back from Canada, but it doesn't find anyone this time. Unsuccessful for Note, and Buddy's in trouble. Boomer's going to chase him down. The USA, oh, they're in control, right?
There's nothing Canada can do.
With 5% left, and they're pushing into spawn. They're going to make a statement early on in this series, and that is the first round of Oasis to the Stars and the Stripes.
A lot of mobility between Muma and space.
This matchup
and if they try and just plow
is
through the
so
front,
heavily
you have
relied
Sinatraa
on
playing the
people
Reinhardt.
using their abilities, and then as soon as you see they've used them, and you can think that they've got nothing to stop you from using yours,
games where Canada has just
they just go for it.
Ryan with the Diva, and they've just kind of run through, or
very
whether it's
big
Ryan
brain.
Zarya, you need to mix it up
To the
a
point
little
where
bit,
it's not just like what ult do they have that's going to stop my ult. It's now they're at a level where it's what ability is going to stop me from using my ability, and they're constantly thinking like that, constantly kind of doing all the things that you need to do, but also thinking
but it allows Muma and
sort of
Space
2
to
steps
kind of play
ahead
their
all
own
the
game
time,
and go for
as
the
much as they
supports
can.
in the back line. So Agilities will bring out his
Again,
sparring area.
USA,
Crimso be
so
playing the
they're so
Mercy
aggressive.
in this situation with Bonnie on
They've already taken. They took City Center so fast,
Lucio.
and there's nothing Canada can do
Hydration will
about
be playing.
it. The notice of Hydration took that Mega really quickly, just for a bit of extra healing, and then he's immediately out the back door trying to scout.
Number 4, Team USA. You'll have Sinatraa playing Tracer.
Right, Tracer Sombra dive from the United States. Ruben takes up.
Wow. Okay. So that is a very quick trigger. So Muma has basically used Shawfall's retreat as a trigger to go forward, and I think, to be honest, I think Crimzo and Agilities have moved too far around this center building to really come back and help immediately, and Hydration would have told them that. Or Moth if he's sort of sitting behind having a look for them. The one thing that USA's comp allows them to do is Space doesn't have to worry about wasting his boosters to go forward into a dive, because both his supports are very mobile. So you've got Fade for Raucous, you've got Amp for Moth, and in fact Moth is probably using Amp to go forward at this point. And because Agilities and Crimzo are playing the Pharmacy, USA basically just took realistically a 4v6 because they can't immediately come and help. They're not the fastest characters, even if Concussion is still up in this case, which it very may not be, depending on how their original opening rotation was. And the fact that Shawfall had to teleport out means that it's for a quick second, it's actually a 3v6. These people have no chance.
Center column. See how he forces that
So that was very good recognition from Muma to just immediately go and dive straight and get rid of their immediate sustain.
Around. He can actually push ahead. Batting falls down. Moth not far behind him either.
And that's what this late reaction time by Crimzo is why I think they was too far away to begin with.
Just to remove XQC.
It took him a good 2-3 seconds to actually turn around and get back here.
I tell you what, Matt, the USA
But
are
that's
bringing
a really good opening.
some unprecedented aggression here in Canada. Definitely seem to be a little bit shell-shocked.
And it's really fun to watch Muma get to play this aggressive, because the Outlaws really didn't play that style of play during the regular season. A little bit slower pace of play.
Just more methodical in general, really.
Yeah, but you always saw Muma almost like a...
This setup from USA is actually really safe. So you've got Muma kind of just checking halls, making sure no one's there, not taking any free damage. Space on the high ground, kind of doing the same thing at this angle. So you've got 2 sight lines down here, 1, 2. We've got Hydration. I've lost him, but I thought I saw him going around the back here.
Mondo a little bit, like on these kind of...
Oh, there he is. I just saw it. There he is. So Hydration's looking that way. You've got someone looking that way, someone looking that way. Moth, he's kind of going back and forth between kind of here and back here. So you've got another view that way. So this is just a very safe, kind of coordinated and scouting setup. Ready for them to come in and kind of catch them either during a rotation or once they commit to the
It's good
point.
to see him, land these nice Winston leaps where he comes in, turns his body, boots people back towards his team.
And you can see just at the very last second, Space drops down from this high ground because he doesn't want to deal with Shawfall's McCree. He's also going to hold this little garden bed down here. You can't see it below the bridge. But what he's doing is, again, same kind of setup as the last map. He's making it so that if they want to push... He's making it so that either one, if they want to push... Sorry, if USA want to push, there is limited space behind them. They do have the center building here. Where the Mega's probably going to be hacked by Hydration. At the same time, they're only committing Space, who has boosters to come back to the high ground if needed. Muma's setting up there, so they're ready to kind of either go behind, come that way. Hydration's behind them anyway, ready for the retreat. They're pushing them back with Space behind their back, and if they get pushed forward, both of them have abilities to kind of quickly run either up to high ground, into choke and hide, back to their supports. There's multiple different angles they can do, and this is why, Winston, Hammond a little bit, and Diva are so strong on a lot of maps, is because they can set up kind of like this and not be really punished for it.
Winston leaps where he comes in, turns his body, boots people back towards his teammates.
Now, this is a second point of proof. So I can see Muma's kind of spraying around. I can see Note spraying. Oh, not Muma, sorry, XQC. And I can see Note doing the same thing. And they're literally just looking for hydration. Even to the point where he just shoots randomly through here, and he's actually nicked him. You can see him coming out of in Viz now, and the immediate call to Shorefall goes out.
Sinatra just got.
He didn't cancel that. He's been nicked by Note. Now this is a good place for some scouting. However, once the shooting from Note started, he's now a little bit cornered. You can't go that way anymore because they're going to find you. What Hydration should have done is hold this wall to keep distance from the tanks who are shooting randomly around this area. Sorry. You're not going to find Shorefall shooting randomly around himself. It's pretty unlikely because of the way that it works and his ammo. You're probably not going to find Benny or Crimzo doing the same thing. You might find Agility swing away randomly, but normally that's why you don't get too close to a brig. So your only real worries are these two. And Note's your biggest worry because his bullets kind of go for a long time. They don't do a lot of damage from that range, but he gets you out of invis, and this is what happens. So you either start with the Sombra, you're either starting over there and hoping he's not shot tapping as he walks around, or you're sitting against this wall to keep yourself safe from Note's shooting. That would have been a better position for you.
Headshot by Shorefall.
Just one of those be a little safer things.
On the high ground, and then McCree started to make his mark. Hydration was caught there. That's not something you're going to be able to recover from
That's
here in the
just
United States.
So Shorefall just traded initial damage of the dive for a small scout for Sinatra. Even though I think the rest of the team knows where he is, considering how much he just randomly gets chunked down.
That's not something you're going to be able to recover from here. The United States are not.
Trading that little bit of information for that initial damage is probably a trade that you should take most times.
Unlike Canada, no resurrection.
Because at the end of the day, information's key. Like, for example, if you double check that and Sinatra happens to be there, that's something that you can tell Barney. It's something that you can try and kill immediately. It's just a safer
We'll see the US just try and stall this fight out a little bit if they can, but Muma doesn't quite escape. Pulse bomb dropped in by Sinatra. He doesn't find anything. Raucous from a great distance is trying to use biotic orbs to have some sort of impact, but it's going to be...
Now, I just noticed XQC put down this bubble. Either the bubble was so that he can force out Raucous's ult, which I don't think so. I think USA at the moment is just in stagger mode, waiting for Mimita and Hydration to come back. Hydration, I assume, is already back in this fight, or is about to be. But they're one down. They're realistically just trying to keep the point ticking for as long as possible here. The reason I don't like this bubble that's kind of sitting here is it doesn't stop anything from happening. It doesn't block any abilities. And considering you should know that Note is 84% ult. Plus, you lost the first fight. So USA is going to have more ult charge than you anyway. You need to assume Space is going to be able to use this ult, regardless of what Hydration's ult is. Because you need to pick the best scenario of trying to block that Diva Bomb. And XUC is going to be... One, he's very good at doing that anyway. He's very good at blocking Diva Bombs. There's Hydration, by the way. He's very good at blocking Diva Bombs. But you can't waste this ability and then let Space throw his bomb like that. I understand EMP was used as well, so even if he jumped to try and get it, it probably wasn't going to do anything, but using it early just kind of presents that you no longer have that tool to block it. So it gives him a lot of option, gives him more option to be able to put his bomb wherever he wants. Because regardless of whether they use EMP or not, you no longer can block it. So you got to be careful of that.
In that self-destruct, that was the EMP from Hydration. XQC gets caught out by that when he couldn't jump away. And Shorefall has to respect the presence that the US have on the point.
And you can use that coalescence if you're Raucous, because you have Space sitting up on the high ground, and he's just able to dart down, contest, and then you have both flankers with Hydration. Sinatra coming off the spawn is... See how aggressive they're going. That'll be Crimzo using a Transcendence in his spawn, just trying to keep everybody alive.
Just to try and avoid staggering out. Now the USA are really...
They're going very
Really
good.
making a point of this.
That's unfortunate he didn't get agilities off. As soon as this high noon comes out, which Muma should be hearing in the background. Muma should be jumping out. He shouldn't be worrying about agilities anymore. He doesn't get agilities off in this scenario. After he hits this palm tree, there's no way agilities goes off anymore without you trading your life for it. Which isn't going to be worth it, because if you knock her off first and then you die, I mean, she's going to come back first. It doesn't really net you much profit.
I mean, we've seen them
and it just makes it worse that you went down for it and now you've put your team in that kind of situation. I think you didn't get her off at this point, and then you just kind of tunneled on it because it was the right play, but once it's swapped because of that unfortunate palm tree issue, you didn't click over and jump out.
Around a little bit against other teams, but this is something completely different.
Also, this is just a general thing for the players that I don't see enough. Look at space. So XQC actually did something that's very clever. Yes, he's trying to just get pressure on them, but what he does is he uses his leap first, knowing that his cooldown's higher than Space's. Space also needs to create some space for his backline, and so he uses boosters forward to keep them away. Sorry, he uses boosters forward to keep XQC away from this, which is obviously very important. But now that he's used boosters, XQC knows that his leap is going to come up before his boosters are up. So they now have a free dive no matter what happens, and there will not be peel, besides obviously like Lucio speed.
Canada fundamentally need to try and get on the same level here. Switching up.
So XQC jumps at Moth. Moth uses boops to get him away, and Space can do absolutely nothing about this right now. Not until his boosters come back.
Going to the bridge to the shore for.
And because of that, to keep Moth alive, Raucus has to pop Coalescence.
McCree is just an excuse to dive.
Now Space has come back in. XQC was starting to drop low as Space got closer, so he pops his ult.
This stage.
And then the next thing that XQC does, which is really good, as well as which is really good because it commands the attention of him. And this is XQC is very good at this. He's always been very good at this. He's a very hyper aggressive Winston. Also, Moth still goes down because of this XQC ult. He keeps Raucus at bay with Coalescence, basically wasting it for the rest of his team.
Yes.
He also then forces Space back in order to help Raucus stay alive in this fight.
A lot happening there.
So two people, XQC basically, not single-handedly, but took Moth out of the fight, forced Coalescence, and then had two people on him while these three struggled to take on these five. So this was a very high valued primal rage. Sorry.
Most importantly for the McCree and the rest of Canada though.
The other reason, so I'm just having a look at this.
Yes.
Notice how whenever XQC
to dive at this stage.
I mean that was a bit of I couldn't really see what was happening.
You see with that primal rage and yes.
He keeps angling it
at this stage.
to hit a little bit further. So with a Reinhardt swing, you obviously swing like that. Notice how if you swing straight on, and you'll have to test this for yourself. If you swing something straight on in Overwatch, it actually has a smaller area of effect. So whenever you swing, it's kind of like, so if this is your angle, this is indented a little bit. So it's kind of like, not indented, I guess. It's hard to explain. But if you angle this a little bit off-centered to your target, you'll be able to hit them from further away. So instead of this dot being exactly on your person that you want to kill or you want to knock away, you put it slightly to the other side of them, and it hits them from further away. So that's kind of what XQC is doing. He's also trying to angle where he's hitting them, and that's kind of where his mouse is coming from.
A lot happening there. Just trying to create some space. Most importantly for them, McCree
That
and the
was
rest
a
of
very
Canada, though,
good,
to set
a
up
very
on the
good
point.
rage.
It was a really nice primal rage. You got Mon.
McCree and the rest of Canada, though, to
Unfortunately, though, he then takes this space, which he probably didn't really need to, considering both the USA tanks are looking to dive this back corner. So that was probably an overuse of his leap. Oops, just
set up on the point.
It was a really nice primal rage. You got Moth back into the corner. You force Raucous back, denied them healing. Surfboard trying to make the difference there. Misses that headshot on a hydration. The point still in favor of Team USA, but Canada.
I also probably I wasn't a fan of
Canada, though,
Space's
to
ult
set
here.
up on the point.
It was
I
a really
think
nice
you're at 94% anyway. Just take the
primal rage.
loss,
You
keep
got
your
Moth
ult.
back into the corner. You force
Realistically, you take this, you flip this point one more time, they're not going to be able to get back to it, even
Raucous
if it's
back,
at
denied them
95.
healing. Surfboard trying to make the difference there. Misses that headshot on a hydration. The
But
point
instead, you used ult, now you have to
still in
jump off the
favor
edge
of Team
anyway.
USA, but Canada, they got 3 players there. They will flip it.
Canada have a chance now to take some breath, but that's about all they're going to have. And they need to
So
use it
now-
wisely. The USA have kept them on the
USA,
back.
so even though they've lost, still 99 to basically, it's 10, right? 99 to 10. One thing that USA can do, if they wanted to, they are realistically 1, 2, 3 ults, three and a half ults I'll give, to 1, that can be 1 because it's a tracer, to 2 ults. So 3.5 to 2 ults. If they want, they're more than welcome to take a dry fight and try and pressure Crimzo, or pressure Note's Diva Bomb out, pressure Shawfor's Deadeye out. Because what you can do here is you have your biggest ally, if you're USA, is time. Your biggest ally here is time. Time gets you passive ult charge, as well as the fact that you're still going to take a fight with them, most likely. So you can come in, choose not to use any ults, try to force and pressure their ults out, come back to the next fight with 1, 2, let's say 3 ults, if Raucous is very good, 4 ults, and get them to use, let's say they use 1 ult, let's say they use Shawfall's ult. So now they've got 1, 2, 3, and you have 4. Maybe XUC does a lot of work. Now it's 4 to 4 instead of sort of 3.5 to 2. And that's just a better situation for you to be going into. You have even more time. Maybe you take a second dry fight and you go back in with 6 ults, pressure out another 2 ults from Canada, and now you've got, worst case scenario, 3 ults to 6. Assuming they use their ults as you expect them to use it as you pressure people. But worst comes to worst, you come in with more ults, you have that time. If you start winning one of these dry fights, then you can, switch, flick the switch and say we're using EMP, and then Hydration will find Crimzo and use the EMP there.
For this entire map so far.
But I think from here on out, the bigger issue is there was a lack of coordination from USA, or proper coordination to how you could have done it, and Canada was very well prepared to deal with this. As well as not just well prepared, they were well organized and they were well informed about what the USA win condition was most likely going to be.
Composition featuring McCree. You see that Brigitte's mostly intended to protect the back line.
Clearly
next
the
QC
EMP
are often going
onto
to be trying to
Crimzo.
dive.
If they can
Do
get the
some of
EMP
that
onto
themselves.
Crimzo
Deal
and
with
move
this
him
Sombra.
immediately
You've
from the
got
team fight,
very much an
they
anti-Sombra
lose a lot of damage with Crimzo's Discord Orb gone.
comp in Brigitte and McCree. EMP. No, it's not.
So this is, again, I'll point out a couple of things
QC
here.
are often going to be trying to
The
dive.
first thing I want to point out is
Do some of that themselves.
this
Deal
is how
with
you can tell that Canada knows. It's very convenient that Crimzo and Benny and Shawfall, Shawfall being up there is pretty normal, but Crimzo and Benny sitting in a nice tight little corridor, waiting, where no one else can really be hit by an EMP, is just sort of it's a showing, it's a projection that you know what ults they have, that's what they're trying to do, and yet you're going to make it as hard as possible for them to pull that off.
this Sombra. You've got very
One
much
thing
an
that
anti-Sombra
happens here is Hydration's coming out of Invis now, but before he would come out of Invis, Muma's already up on this high ground. He's already dived to move Shawfall off. And the issue is Shawfall's always going to go to his supports here. And because the EMP wasn't ready to be used, because of coming out of Invis, Shawfall can just throw the stun and basically eliminate Hydration straight away. And because there's no more ults on USA's side, nothing for them to swing the fight back in their favour, they're now fighting a 5v6.
And McCree. Oh! No, it's not going to happen! Hydration tries to go for it, he almost gets it up! But it's interrupted midway through and he's stunned, and now there's a Deadeye for sure.
So I wish Crimzo didn't. I wish he didn't use that that trans, but at the same time, there was literally milliseconds between Hydration getting that ultimate off and Shawfall getting the stun. So.
The USA, they're done. They're not having any of it.
So I think that's realistic. That's probably just a small communication issue between Hydration and Muma there. Hydration probably needed to control that engagement a little bit better from his angle, just so he could get that EMP off, and then once the EMP goes off, Muma can then jump in. Doing it the other way around is probably going to be a little bit difficult, especially when Shawfall is always going to retreat into that narrow corridor where his supports are.
How big of a difference maker EMP is? That is such a huge play there from Team Canada, able to take out Hydration. We can take a look, replay here from Shawfall.
You can see how Muma jumps up before Hydration is fully out of Invis, before he's even started to get out of Invis. He jumps as Hydration comes out, well, starts coming out, and that's kind of the mistake. If he starts coming out and then Muma jumps up, then it's a different story. This is literally misplayed or misexecuted by a sheer second, unfortunately.
He sees him. The reaction.
Otherwise, he pulls it off. USA
began, but it didn't proc.
If they pull that off.
99% to 50 now. Canada halfway up. Here comes a dive in.
This was interesting.
99% to 50 now. Canada halfway up.
So Sinatra took an extra second to move from here to there instead of just holding W the whole way. And what's going to happen now is he's going to be missing a blink. See how now he's only got 2 blinks? Or 1 blink at the moment? He's only got 1, he's about to have 2. He sees Crimzo, he's got a pulse bomb. Again, the win condition is to get rid of Crimzo, to just remove the Discord orb because it's so powerful. But because he's only got 1 or 2 blinks to play with, he can only realistically use 1. Because Canada is running agilities on Brig. So if Tracer gets too close to Brig, he's going to get stun comboed, immediately killed, and then again it's the same situation, they're fighting a 5v6. But because he's only got the 1 blink, he can't, because he's only got the 2 blinks, sorry, he can't use both without getting himself killed. If he uses 1, he doesn't get close enough to Crimzo to actually stick this pulse bomb properly.
Here comes a dive in, Sinatra just holding the high ground.
If you see what I mean. The other thing is they actually read this very well. So the hack probably comes out a little bit too early on to Note, because if he's hacked a little bit later, Sinatra gets this pulse on properly, but Note is sitting there waiting for his pulse to come. You can see the DM facing this way, straight onto Crimzo, which is really good. And so the bomb's just immediately eaten anyway.
Want to get too aggressive, wants to try and kick that presence, but Zildi's wants to shove him off. Then the Brigadier can drop down and start stunning from behind. Shawfall again just trying to keep his enemy at arm's length, but Muma took a big hit from that Deadeye, and the follow-up was...
Muma here is literally trying to do what XQC
wants to shove him off. Then the
before I get into that,
too aggressive.
I'll explain this. So as soon as Agility gets too close, he's allowed to blink out, and he still has 1 blink to move. And that way he's not caught without any movement in case someone wants to focus Sinatra.
Wants to shove him off. Then the Brigadier...
This is here Muma's trying to do exactly what XQC was doing, and he is doing it well, to be fair. He's keeping Crimzo in a corner. Crimzo does have armor to use, though, to be fair. He's also keeping the Discord onto Muma to get as much damage down as possible. So he's got the focus of realistically probably 3 people in Shawfall, Barney, and Crimzo, which leaves the rest of Team Canada, so Agilities and Note, an XQC who's now dead because I didn't get there fast enough. So he leaves these 3 people to fight the rest of Team USA. One really good thing that happens though, Note absolutely saves this with his ult. So XQC goes down, can't stop that.
Again, just trying to keep his enemy
Note's
at
going
arm's
to
length,
drop
but
really low, and he knows he's going to be demeched. But look at his positioning, he's not trying to get out.
took a big hit from
He
that
starts walking towards XQC's body. And he pops his ult, gets out of the mech, and as soon as he's out of the mech, Barney's going to try and res XQC.
The follow-up was good. No de-suited now.
The other thing in this is a really awkward angle for a Diva Bomb to be at, because you get all of this. All of this space is now immediately retaken, and that's exactly where most of Team USA was. And they have to back out as fast as they can to behind this pillar, or even further behind these walls.
Self-destruct wants his mech back, and he will get.
And you see Barney's there trying to res
That one
immediately,
short fall
and
protects
no
him with
one
the Peacemaker.
on Team USA can stop that.
USA running out of presence here, Matt.
Well, it's big. They use that self-destruct to be able to get.
It's also very good discipline to, be okay to let this flip over again, knowing that they're going to have that over time. A lot of teams will just completely commit to this point to stop the flip. You got to remember from time to time, it's okay to let the point flip. It's okay to give, assuming they're on 99 and you're all still there. It's okay to give up a tick. It's okay to give up 2 ticks if it means you're going to have a more quality fight if you're giving up that time, which is exactly what Team Canada did, and that's exactly what they're going to get.
Get in and res
So
XQCs.
quality fights are sometimes more important than just a single fight to hold on to this for dear life.
Got Primal Rage to use
They're
as
happy
well.
to give up some percentage
Right now
to
it will
get
be
that
Canada
quality.
taking the point back.
fighting.
You did have Sinatra there up on the high ground. He gets back towards the rest of his team, but the self-destructive note
So
placed
then
right over
Canada
by
goes down, then
XQC's
they lose
body.
on that.
Everybody from USA has to run away. They don't want to try and contest that as Bonnie gets the res off. So you get your Winston back in the fight.
Hydration. Fool me once.
Excuse me.
Shame on
So
me.
Not again.
Team USA are
Fool me
now
twice. Also shame on me. He has that EMP.
they're basically in the same situation they were the last time. Crimzo has ult, Hydration has ult. They've got XUC and Barney. So hopefully
He's very close to
This
short for. He's
time.
asking for it, but here's the dive. So
this time Muma jumps up, knocks Shore4 off, and Hydration's still waiting for that. He didn't go in immediately to use it. He waited this time.
goes in. Actually hasn't
Probably hoping that Crimson would think he's coming out ready to go.
revealed himself yet. I think he was happy with the
Instead what happens
short for. He's asking for it,
is
but
if
here's
you
the
look
dive.
at
So
Space's ult up
he
here,
goes in. Actually hasn't revealed himself.
he forces the ult in there before Hydration is ready. Crimzo is just ready to shoot a 5-ball up here in case Muma's coming down.
Yeah, I think he was.
And it forces Hydration into a position that he needs to be in to get as many people as possible. I think Hydration, this is sort of the same issue as before. Space has forced it too early, and Hydration's not able to get it done without showing his hand too early. It also forces Crimzo to actually use his ult earlier, because if he doesn't, Space is going to get this kill regardless of what happens. So this EMP had to go off before Crimzo could use ult, but because of the time difference and the warning that Space gave, kind of showed their hand and let Crimzo be aware of what was going to happen, and just have his finger hover over that ultimate.
Happy with the disengage. He gets himself a big EMP. This time it works out. And Space removes agility from the mix. Now the Bricketter's not there to stun up any of the divers.
And
The
here is
USA
just
has one, however, and Sinatra
another
now interrupts.
situation. XQC's in their backline. I can probably guarantee he's doing the same
Trying
thing
to
as
get towards
before.
the back line of the USA.
USA's
That's a
hitting
ditto.
him
You heard
back,
it ring out
trying to
across
get
the
a
map.
quality fight. However, the time frame this time is too much. They have to. One of the mechanics of King of the Hill is that you have to touch the point at 97, or what's going to happen is it's going to tick over. It's not going to tick over into overtime properly. If you don't touch between 97 and 99, if you don't touch between that, it won't go into overtime. And so this ultimate is to zone everyone off the point, or trade their life before 99 so that they could get a body onto the point. And that's exactly what hydration was. He was basically just a mule to cop that in the head to get rid of it, so that they could touch the point.
Hydration
But it's
goes
not
down
going to
to
matter.
shore
They've
for
lost
an
to me.
extreme range. And now Canada
And the XCC is still in their back
the
line,
high
still
ground,
causing
Luke.
trouble.
Raining damage down.
In this one, it looks like it will go over to Canada, Mitch. Moth gets on the point. He will fall.
It's in
And,
water.
and you know what? We don't see it during that whole engagement there towards the end. XQC keeps that alive for Canada. Because what happens is that self-destruct comes in and they use the Transcendence over on the other side. On the opposite side of the map, it's Raucous, Moth. You have Space there as well, and then there's one other player, and XQC stays alive long enough, gets antied, uses Primal Rage,
On the
knocks
city
those players
center.
Huge time to use that. Very difficult. You're always on
Crimzo.
edge when you're playing against an
This man
opposition
is a god.
Sombra.
To some kind of variation. You remember, I believe it was the London Spitfire in the finals. They ran
So this is an odd comp. This is one of those, like, every coach has like a throw together comp that they just, you know, the players fall in love with because it's fun to play. It generally works in scrims. Sometimes it works in officials, and so you kind of pull it out, you know, especially in times like this where it's, you know, you've 100% committed to BlizzCon because you've made it. You still want to beat USA, and you've probably used this successfully in scrims before. Other teams have done sort of similar things, like in China, I think they did a quad DPS, which is, you know, pretty interesting. Single tank, this is a lot of damage. This has gone from, you know, Canada having basically no damage for the past two maps, or first map, to medium damage second map, to just overkill third map. But I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all.
Fury, who is there off
One of the
tank on
biggest things you want to do is like
76, and they play
speed
Profit
shortfall with Barney
on
into
Reaper,
basically
so
into the
little bit
enemy
of a
team
variation.
and just
You
have
have
him
the Brigade
cause
in the
absolute
mix
havoc,
here.
Yeah, it's triple support with just a single tank.
while agility
But Reaper
spams
has
away.
that passive healing by putting down damage, and
76.
Soldier 76 as well.
So yeah, you expect
I think
a lot of those healing resources.
so. Team USA went the opposite way, which is fine. I think Muma should have been poking his head around to just see what was going on. There wasn't really enough scouting from Team USA, and Note was able to take advantage of that, and kind of catch them a little bit off guard. I'm assuming obviously a lot of the other parts of the team USA is down there with sort of the Reaper and probably Barney and Crimzo. But this just catches Sinatra completely off guard, because Muma's not there scouting properly, Space isn't scouting properly.
Also to be dedicated to shore for. No playing
And you can see how late Muma drops down compared to like the rest of Team Canada. They just speed on through, let drop first. It forces Muma to actually use his leap early, just to get back from high ground.
on the Soldier
Which is something
76.
you never
Sinatra
really
just
want to
gets
do on this
splattered
one.
early on. Looks like both of these teams have got some
I actually would have thought Note should have stayed up
Special
there.
spice
Just
to
then.
bring into
I
this
don't think
match.
there's much relevance of him sitting
So,
down
we
here,
were
considering
joking
they've
with
already killed the only person that can really contest him. Unless Space wants to force boosters, in which case he can just
before
run
you
away
went out there, we saw him
around
play his
the nipple.
Zenyatta. He's like, hey, gold damage, man. I can play
Which is just
whatever.
like that center building, by the way.
Coming out here on the 76, he does get jumped on by Space, taken out, but it'll be Canada in control of the point first, and it's so important to get control of this specific
Like, that was just
point
pure
first. We see
aggression.
it, you can hold on to it for so long, so many good places to just extend the time on it, as hydration will play far. So I think that's the
I don't like that XQC is trying to force himself into this corner.
right move. You want to challenge Note,
I think-
an off-tank player playing hit scan right now.
And I'm pretty sure if they come out of this and turn that corner, that's visible. Pretty sure they can see your foot from there, because XQC is trying to squish himself
See
in
if he
that
can
corner
shoot a
with
bar out of the
agilities.
sky as good as hydration.
In fact, you can kind of see it. They have a
Scan
tell.
right now.
Space
See
has
if
a
he can
tell
shoot
when
a
he's
bar
noticed
out of the
someone.
sky as good as hydration.
He's immediately like AD spamming. Moth has shot towards them, and they still haven't moved. And then hydration goes for
for a
it
right quick opportunity. Oh, here we go.
and shoots a clean 2 rockets in the middle of them. They had to know they were there. They had to have been seen.
They're getting aggressive, but Agility's took a lot of
And then this fight is just it's going to be very difficult for Canada.
damage early on. Hydration. Actually,
They left
for a right
Crimzo?
quick opportunity. Oh, here we go.
Or is that-
They're getting aggressive, but Agility's took a lot of damage early on.
Yeah, so XQC is the only person that can really,
Right quick opportunity. Oh,
at this point in time, because of how low Agilities is and how low Banny is,
here we go. You're getting
neither of
aggressive
them
with agility.
can actually peel
Got a lot of
properly
damage early on.
without healing
Hydration
properly.
actually made them think twice.
Without healing first, sorry. XQC jumping in lets Muma free reign into
About
Crimzo,
making this engagement. They're a little bit
because both Barney and Agilities would have
with
been
Muma
already
dealing with
backwards.
Crimzo now. That's a Zenyatta missing. They do have 2 more supports, but not a lot of
In
healing.
fact, I know they're already backwards because look at where they are. So they already bailed it all the way around, and just left Crimzo there because he wasn't surviving that.
Shortfall gets turned into an edgelord. Pancake is moving the set.
This Winston ult,
They do have 2 more supports, but not a lot of healing.
he used it to stay alive.
Shortfall gets turned into an
That's
edgelord.
fair enough,
Pancake is
I
moving
guess.
the sends. And now hydration
I probably would have
can follow
thought.
up here with as much damage
I understand you doing this to keep
as
percentage,
possible.
which is fine.
Numbers definitely
I think you
favouring
probably used too many ults to try and do that,
USA right now.
though.
And a lot of
Unless you're
time
wanting to swap off the
being bought
brig.
by XQC, the USA retake the point. And this monkey,
You're also just staggered
a lot of
yourself
time
really
being bought by
badly there.
XQC, the USA favouring the USA
So
right now.
he
And a lot
used both his jumps there, so he doesn't actually
of
have a
time being
jump to
bought
get
by
out.
XQC, the USA retake the point. And this
Instead of trying to hide around this corner, I mean, not that you probably wouldn't know as XQC. You probably wouldn't know that he has his ult already up. But just trying to get to the road here is probably your best option. Just get yourself off the map as fast as possible. There's zero chance of you getting back. There's zero chance of you not staggering by this point.
for the world.
Just kill yourself as
Yeah,
fast as
he
possible.
jumps a
Don't
little
try
bit
and
too
run
high
away.
there, and it allows him to take the point back as Bonnie not able to get back and contest hydration, being very aggressive. And you see right away, Canada switches off of it. Note will not play the 76 anymore. He'll go back and play some Diva.
But it was a good
he brings
stagger. I mean, they got to
Shirtforce
50% or 47%.
19% to 47. So
as he brings
One thing I want to
switches
point
off
out
of it,
here
Note
for
will
Team
not
USA is
test
the amount of
hydration.
scouting they're now doing because of how punished they were the first
being
time.
very aggressive. And you see
So
right
you
away,
look at
Canada
hydration.
switches off of it.
Double checks, particularly double checks here. No one there.
Note will not play the
Goes to where
76
he needs
anymore.
to be.
He'll go back and play
Raucous double checks down this angle while people are running away.
some Diva as he brings Shirtforce McCree.
Raucous, as he's flying up, had a quick little look around there.
19% to 40.
Space is still looking this way. Muma falls off the edge and gets another look that way. The amount of scouting coming through
67, so
these middle doors,
Huge start for Canada there.
purposeful scouting is
They were hoping for
ridiculous
something. They grouped up
because
as a
of what
death
they
ball.
want to do.
But now big
And as soon as Barney commits to walking past this imaginary line or this choke, both Muma and Hydration commit forward. And
switch is coming up.
the assumption is their space.
Here for short, but Batty just gets disintegrated immediately though. Crimzo still good timing with the transcendence, but it wasn't quite quick enough this time around. Muma had to use the primal rage, also the sound barrier.
This extra step to deny this mini is just a step too far. If Muma doesn't do this, he turns around and
some of
gets
these
out
ultimates here.
with space. Because he decided he wanted to take that mini and deny it from anyone, which in my opinion was probably very silly.
Muma had to use the primal rage, also the sound barrier. USA
Because you've still got your 400 health, 450 health. You've got time to turn around. Like if you turn around
quick
much
enough this
before
time
you
around.
get
Muma had to use the primal
here,
rage, also
this
the
is
sound
just being greedy. There's absolutely no reason to take this.
barrier. USA dig and ding for some of these ultimates here. They've got agilities, but Shortfall face down Muma.
And you just give
10
short.
paces and removes him. Sinatra though wants to get aggressive. You know when you're playing with this man, you need to follow him into the deep.
So
Bunny and Notes.
take what you can get and get out.
As
That
USA set
will
up
always
now
be
to
your
even the
best
score.
option. Don't go too far. Don't go too greedy. There's no reason.
They used Rocket Barrage. They ended up using their sound barrier.
It is
and
good, though.
rally
What I
during
will
that
say
fight.
is
Hold
that he
on to
didn't
Primal
use
Rage.
Primal
You want
Rage
to
to
do that
save
to
him.
be able to contest the point for even longer.
So he
As
acknowledged
Agility
his
still play his
mistake.
own part now. Crimzo will
He
switch
could have
off of
used Primal
Zen.
Rage to get out
Gonna
and
play
live,
Mercy here. Trying to pocket
but
the
he
sky,
pretty much just
you
owned
do have
it.
Bonnie
he's letting himself come back into this next fight, and he's going to have that
extra. A lot of the players from USA not holding on to that armor used from the rally at Sinatra.
Bird in the hand is
so that's a very important note, that he's, even though he made a mistake, he didn't freak out and he didn't ruin their ult economy for it.
the bush, especially up against another thorough composition on this map. You need to try to
Again,
see a lot of the
sorry, I'll go back.
here, trim pocket in the sky.
Just a little bit.
Now, Crimson will switch off of Zen.
So again, notice space. Just always looking, scouting, relaying back to his team, especially considering Muma's over here. Jumping, seeing what he can see, seeing where their Farah is, because they've changed over. And Hydration's just shooting down, having a look, poking. He can see both entrances here. So there's 3 people in total, 4 people probably with Raucus, obviously scouting.
Gonna play Mercy here, trim pocket in the sky, but you do have Bonnie's sound barrier. Could be big coming in on a push. You see a lot of the players from USA not holding on to that armor used from the rally at Sinatra.
And just shooting,
Bird
getting
in the
ult
hand
charge.
is two in the bush, especially up against another thorough composition on this.
This was a terrible
You
rotation.
see a lot of the
by
players
Canada.
from USA not holding on to that armor used from the rally.
They rotate from this main door all the way across the face of the point to the next main door.
Bird in the hand is
The left side flank, the coast flank, or Cars flank, if you will. This is similar for those who play soccer. It's similar to passing the ball across the goals. That's what this is similar to. From a young age, the first thing you're taught is don't kick the ball across the goals, because that's how likely it is for someone to get that and kick it in. People still do it in pro play. This is a similar concept. Don't kick the ball across the goals if you don't have to. Take the safe route. If that's what you want to do, take the safe route. Their next mistake is they actually send Shore4 here first, which is the person that they probably want to hard dive more, and then they send Moth second, and it's not in a clumped group, nothing like that. Like look at this spacing. This is just a recipe for disaster, to be honest. Either Muma lands here, gets damage, pops ult, knocks him into the cars, kills him anyway, or what happens is he doesn't land there properly, and
the bush, especially
the following happens basically.
up against another thorough composition on this map. You need to try and exercise that height advantage. Bunny gets just split.
So Team Canada are now 2 people down,
primal rage for the USA. They start off this
and they
fight well.
look a little bit confused as to what to actually do here. So they're 2 people down. Pretty much everyone's at half health except for agilities. You're at 80%. At this point, someone needs to make the call to immediately reset. You can still salvage this fight by giving up and having a quality next fight.
Dig through a lot of their remaining ultimates, but it's worked out for them now.
And yet it's almost like they went to do it.
Everyone.
Or it's possible that space just knocks them that way.
Through a lot of their remaining ultimates, but it's worked out.
And they see Muma jump a little bit too far, and they try and take advantage of that and let that distract them to what they're actually trying to do here. Just leave. You really just need to leave here.
Now it's everyone into the traffic. I feel like
And I mean, they stagger themselves so much right next to the cars, and by the time everyone's dead, you're at 86. Once you're at
want to stagger, but doesn't want to
80,
die in traffic. Let it be done.
I'll say 85, probably closer to 90.
Sure.
If not everyone is alive at 90%, you have pretty much 0 chance of getting back to this point. Because you just simply don't have the speed to make it from spawn back, especially not as a team.
Every opportunity they had when he was playing
I've guaranteed that even if you do get back, you'll be staggering on.
Jumped right on top of him. Gonna see the agility.
And then I don't think they even make it back to the point.
Here.
There's no time. There's no time. And the United States.
So the critical mistake there was not identifying, like the mistake that lost them that was not identifying the fact that you needed to reset and turn around and come back. Canada needed to take more quality fights over what they were really doing. And you could see they did that from time to time, and USA definitely did that from time to time. USA just had probably a more understanding of what, with maybe the exception of Mover from time to time, whose job was kind of to ignore that rule, but they all kind of knew how much they could take, where they could take it, and then how much they needed to give based on their current situation, which was just evident in like Gardens. It was pretty evident in University when Moomba went forward and the rest of his team went back to help Space. Even though they lost that fight, they still did everything they kind of could to try and stay safe, keep the point theirs, fight a fight that's going to be a bit more convenient for them. Hence, sort of that Sinatra hide on the first point, where he came out and tried to charge the first person he saw. Unfortunately, it was Note and it didn't help, but they still got out a lot of ultimates for that. So, quality fights were probably a really big issue there for Canada. They would start a fight, they would make a mistake and not recognize it, and then continue to fall down that mistake, the mistake rabbit hole almost, where you kind of come into a fight, one bad thing happens where they cross the front of the point, don't pass the ball in front of the goals, and they didn't recognize what the next move should have been because they probably felt pressed for time, even though they had some time available to them. So that was probably the biggest thing. But no, this sort of map, Oasis, this series is kind of riddled with cooldown management, knowing the opponent's cooldowns, keeping note of ults. There is so much going on and between these North American players that I think a lot of other regions are really lacking, and really need to kind of look at. Like, these two teams are just straight up a cut above everyone else that I've seen so far. So that was pretty much my VOD review for USA vs Canada on Oasis. Hope you all enjoyed it. Leave your feedback, anything like that. I'd love to hear it.